to an empire. March 1811. France stands at the summit of power. Across Europe, armies still echo with the footsteps of one man. A man history will remember as Napoleon I. But on this night, it is not the conqueror who holds his breath. It is the father. Inside the grand halls of the Tuileries Palace, torches flicker, doctors whisper, courtiers wait in tense silence, and then a cry. An heir is born, Napoleon Francois Charles Joseph. But already he is given another name, the King of Rome, a title of immense promise, an invisible weight. The imperial dynasty now has a future. His mother, Marie Louise of Austria, Archduchess of Austria, daughter of the Habsburg line, has given France what the empire demanded, a successor. For the first time, Napoleon is not alone before destiny. Cannons thunder across Paris. 101 shots. A boy. The crowd understands. Celebration erupts. But beneath the cheers, politics already stirs. This child is not only a son, he is a living treaty, a fragile bridge between Imperial France and Habsburg Austria. He is peace, or the next war. In his private chamber, the emperor stands over the cradle. Silence. He studies the small face, the broad forehead, the future. Battles win territories, but cradles secure empires. Napoleon understands this better than anyone. The King of Rome grows surrounded by splendor, tutors, uniforms tailored in miniature, ceremonial rituals. He is told of Rome, of Caesar, of Charlemagne. No one speaks yet of defeat. In 1811, the empire still appears invincible, but Europe watches. In London, in Vienna, in St. Petersburg. They do not see a baby. They see continuity. They see a dynasty that might last a century, and that possibility unsettles them. Then comes 1812. Russia, winter, fire. The empire begins to fracture. Napoleon leaves for campaign. He kisses his son, perhaps too briefly, perhaps already aware that history is closing in. The following years darken quickly. Coalitions reform. French armies retreat. Europe no longer wants an empire. It wants balance, restoration, stability. And in that restored order, there is no place for a King of Rome. 1814, Paris falls. Allied troops enter the capital. Napoleon abdicates, but in his abdication, he writes a name, his own and his son's, Napoleon II. For a few fragile hours, perhaps days, the child becomes officially Napoleon II, Emperor of the French, an emperor on paper, an emperor without throne, without army, without power. At the Congress of Vienna, Europe redraws itself. Borders shift. Monarchies return. The goal is clear. Erase revolution. Erase the empire. Erase the possibility of Bonaparte continuity. The child leaves France. He travels east, toward Vienna, toward another life. He will never see his father again. Inside the Schönbrunn Palace, he becomes something else. No longer King of Rome, no longer emperor, but a prince under watch, an heir to be reshaped, a memory to be neutralized. Act 1 closes here. The imperial child lives on, but the empire has collapsed, and in the quiet corridors of restored Europe, his destiny is already being rewritten. Act 2, the child of two courts. Silence, not the silence of peace, but the silence of corridors. Long, polished, imperial corridors, in the vast palace of Schönbrunn in Vienna. A child walks, not a free child, not an ordinary child, but a child watched, observed, measured. He's no longer the King of Rome. That title has already faded into diplomacy. Here, he is known as Franz. Franz, Duke of Reichstadt. A new name, a new language, a new destiny, imposed. He's 4 years old when he leaves France, too young to understand exile, old enough to feel absence. His father, far away, his mother, increasingly distant, and around him, the Austrian court, the court of his grandfather, Emperor Francis I, a world of etiquette, of ritual, of controlled gestures. Everything here is discipline. Everything here is memory management. Austria remembers Napoleon, and Austria fears him, even in the shape of a child. Slow breath. The boy grows in rooms filled with portraits of Habsburg ancestors, emperors who ruled by tradition, not revolution. He studies German. He practices military drills. He learns obedience. History is carefully edited around him. They do not forbid the name Napoleon. They simply avoid it. Strategic silence. His tutors are loyal to Vienna. His companions are chosen carefully. Every book he reads, every uniform he wears, every conversation he overhears, filtered, because Europe is still fragile. The Congress of Vienna has reshaped the continent. Balance must be preserved. And this child, this son of the fallen emperor, is a potential storm. He grows tall, remarkably tall, with delicate features, almost fragile, but in his eyes there is something restless, an intensity that unsettles. He asks questions about battles, about France, about Austerlitz. The name slips out one day. Austerlitz. His tutors hesitate. "Careful, Your Highness," the boy insists. He wants maps. He wants details. He wants truth. But truth is political, and political truth is dangerous. Slow breath. His mother, Louise, drifts further away. She lives in Parma now. She builds a new life, a new family. Letters become rare. Visits become ceremonial. He feels it. Abandonment, without scandal. His grandfather shows him affection in the restrained way of monarchs. But affection does not answer identity. Who is he? An Austrian archduke, or the heir to an empire that once shook Europe? He stands between two worlds and belongs fully to neither. In France, rumors circulate. Bonapartists whisper his name, the Aiglon, the little eagle. They imagine him growing strong, preparing, waiting. But here in Vienna, he waits for nothing, because he is not allowed to wait. He's educated to serve Austria, not to claim France. His uniform is Austrian blue, not imperial French. Symbolism matters. Even colors are political. Slow inhale. As adolescence approaches, something changes. He begins to understand the weight of expectation. Servants speak softly when he enters. Diplomats glance at him too long. Visitors from France stare with a mix of hope and regret. He senses it. He's a living symbol, and symbols are never free. Metternich, the master strategist of Europe, watches closely. Clemens von Metternich, cold, calculated, patient. He understands the power of myths, and he knows that the son of Napoleon must never become one. So the young duke is kept close, encouraged in military study but denied command, praised but limited, honored but contained. A golden cage, beautiful, silent, locked, slow breath. At night, he sometimes asks for stories, not fairy tales, campaigns, Italy, Egypt, Russia. He listens with burning attention, and when the story ends, he remains silent. What does he imagine? Glory, revenge, recognition, or simply his father's voice? He keeps a portrait hidden, not displayed, not official, private. A small image of Napoleon. He studies it, the posture, the gaze, trying to find resemblance, trying to find permission. But resemblance is complicated. He is slender, sickly at times, often coughing, the robust conqueror of Europe, and this pale young man. Contrast is cruel. Slow inhale. In 1821, news arrives. St. Helena, Napoleon is dead. The message travels quietly, but in Vienna, it echoes. For the young duke, The father he barely knew is now legend and unreachable. No reconciliation, no final words, only history. Something shifts inside him. The possibility of return fades. France will not call him now. The Restoration stands firm. The Bourbons rule, and Europe breathes easier. The eagle's son remains grounded. Slow breath. He throws himself into military training, not as rebellion, as proof. If he cannot be emperor, he can be soldier. He rides with precision, studies tactics with intensity. His instructors admit it quietly. He has talent, perhaps inherited, but talent without political permission is ornamental. He is allowed drills, not destiny. At court, whispers persist. Some Austrians fear he might one day flee. Others doubt he has the strength. He feels their doubt, and doubt becomes fuel. He dreams of leading troops, of hearing cannon fire not as memory, but as command. Yet each request for greater responsibility meets polite refusal. Not now, soon, later. Later never arrives. Slow breath. He walks through Schönbrunn gardens alone. Long paths, carefully trimmed hedges, everything ordered. Unlike the chaotic maps of Europe he studies, order outside, conflict inside. He practices French in private, the language of his father, the language of ambition. He whispers it, as if speaking it too loudly might summon consequences. Identity fractures quietly. In Austria, he is Franz. In France, he is Napoleon II. In reality, he is neither fully. The child of two courts, claimed by both, trusted by neither, and time is moving. Slow inhale. His health begins to weaken. Coughs linger longer. Fatigue arrives sooner. Physicians recommend rest, but he resists. Rest feels like surrender. He wants to prove something. To Vienna, to France, to history. Perhaps most of all, to himself. Europe watches from a distance. The legend grows larger in absence. The more silent he becomes, the more myth expands. The Eaglet, romantic, tragic, unfulfilled. But in these corridors, he's simply a young man trying to understand who he is allowed to be. Slow breath. Between portraits of Habsburg emperors and the invisible shadow of Napoleon, he stands suspended, not yet broken, not yet legendary, just waiting. And in the quiet of Schönbrunn, history holds its breath. Fade to silence, silence again. But not the silence of childhood. This one is heavier, thicker. It presses against the lungs. Franz is no longer a boy. He's a young man now, tall, pale, refined, and increasingly aware. Aware that his life is being watched, measured, contained. In the quiet rooms of Schönbrunn Palace, mirrors reflect a figure that the history does not quite know what to do with. He stands before one of them, examines his profile. The nose, similar. The gaze, perhaps. But the body, fragile. Too fragile. A cough interrupts the comparison. Soft at first, then deeper. He hides it. He always hides it. Because weakness is dangerous when you are the son of a legend. Slow breath. In France, the Bourbons rule uneasily. Bonapartist circles whisper again. Revolutions tremble beneath the surface of Europe. And in Vienna, Metternich remains vigilant. Clemens von Metternich understands one simple truth. A living symbol is more dangerous than a dead emperor. So the Duke of Reichstadt is honored, respected, but never empowered. He receives a rank in the Austrian army, a uniform tailored to perfection, gold embroidery, immaculate posture. But rank without command is decoration, and he knows it. He studies military theory obsessively. Campaign maps cover his desk. He traces his father's roots with his finger. Italy, Egypt, Austerlitz, Wagram. He lingers on Wagram, a battle against Austria, against his own grandfather's empire. History twists in his veins. Slow inhale. He writes letters, careful letters, measured words. He speaks of duty, of discipline, of loyalty to Austria. But between the lines, there is longing. Longing for recognition, not as myth, not as symbol, as a man. In 1830, Europe erupts again. The July Revolution shakes France. Charles X falls. Louis Philippe rises. The throne trembles. For a brief moment, possibility flickers. Bonapartists whisper louder than ever. Some imagine him returning, crossing borders, claiming destiny. For the first time, Vienna feels the tremor. Metternich tightens surveillance. The Duke senses it. He hears fragments of conversations cut short, sees glances exchanged in corridors. Hope and fear coexist. Slow breath. He dares to dream. Not loudly, not foolishly, but privately. He imagines riding at the head of troops, not Austrian, French. He imagines hearing his name not as curiosity, but as command, Napoleon. The name still carries voltage, but reality is colder than imagination. Austria will never release him. France is divided, and he is physically weakening. The cough returns, more persistent. Blood appears once. He hides it again, because illness feels like betrayal, as if his body itself refuses history. Slow inhale. Doctors speak in careful tones. Fatigue, inflammation, rest. But tuberculosis does not negotiate, and he begins to understand something terrible. He may never even have the chance to fail. He walks alone more often now, through the gardens, through long corridors. His footsteps echo, not with authority, with isolation. He reads about his father's final years, St. Helena, exile, illness, defeat. He studies the portrait again. For the first time, he does not search for resemblance. He searches for forgiveness. Forgiveness for not becoming what others expected. Slow breath. He confides once, quietly, to a trusted companion. They have made me into a man without a country. The sentence lingers. Without a country. Austria does not fully trust him. France does not fully possess him. He belongs to history. But history does not grant him agency. His body grows thinner. The uniform hangs differently now, cheekbones sharper, eyes larger in a narrowing face, still intelligent, still burning. But time is shortening. He continues military exercises despite exhaustion. He insists. He will not be remembered as weak. Yet strength cannot reverse disease. Slow inhale. News from France continues to arrive. Political instability, Republican tension, Bonapartist nostalgia. He listens carefully. Every word a spark. But no official summons ever comes. No call, no invitation. Only silence and surveillance. In moments of solitude, he allows himself to imagine an alternate life. If his father had won at Waterloo, if exile had never happened, if he had grown up in Paris instead of Vienna, would he have ruled wisely? Would he have been loved or crushed under comparison? We will never know, and perhaps neither did he. Slow breath. The illness advances. Nights become difficult. Sweat, fever, coughing that leaves him breathless. Doctors no longer pretend. Tuberculosis, the same century that glorifies empire, consumes its heirs. He's 21 years old, an age of beginning. Yet his ending approaches. He asks for fewer visitors now, too much effort to speak. But when France is mentioned, his eyes still sharpen, still ignite, even now, especially now. Slow inhale. He once said, "I would rather die on a battlefield than in a bed." History is rarely poetic. There is no battlefield, no cavalry charge, no final speech, only a quiet room, curtains drawn, summer light filtering in, and a young man struggling to breathe. On July 22nd, 1832, the prince who never reigned dies. No crown ever touched his head. No decree bore his signature. No army marched under his command. Yet his absence echoes louder than some reigns. Slow breath. In Vienna, he is mourned with dignity. In France, he becomes legend. The Eaglet, the little eagle, forever young, forever unrealized. Perhaps that is why the myth grows stronger, because potential is immortal. Unfulfilled destiny never disappoints, it only haunts. The prince who never reigned leaves behind no empire, only a question. What would he have become if allowed to choose? Silence and history offers no answer. Act 4. The legend of the Eaglet silence. Not the silence of illness, not the silence of exile, but the silence that follows a life unfinished. July 1832. In Vienna, the young Duke of Reichstadt is buried quietly. No imperial throne draped in black for him. No empire trembling at his passing. Only restrained ceremony, measured grief. Austria closes the chapter with dignity, but France does not close it. In Paris, whispers turn into remembrance. The son of Napoleon, Napoleon II, the child who never ruled, the prince who never returned. He becomes something more powerful in death than he ever was in life. A symbol, and symbols travel faster than armies. Slow breath. Europe in the 1830s is unstable. Revolutions flicker across the continent. Poland rises, Italy stirs. Belgium declares independence. The old order, carefully reconstructed at the Congress of Vienna, begins to crack, and within that trembling landscape, the memory of the Eaglet resurfaces, not as a political program, as a longing. Bonapartists gather in salons and cafes. They speak his name softly, not as strategy, but as regret. If he had lived, if he had returned, if history had allowed him one chance. The power of what if is immense. It reshapes memory, it softens reality. It transforms a fragile young man into a romantic figure suspended in possibility. Slow inhale. Writers begin to reclaim him. Poets elevate him. Dramatists give him the voice he never fully used in life. In 1900, Edmond Rostand stages L'Aiglon in Paris. The theatre fills. Audiences weep. On stage, the Duke of Reichstadt becomes heroic, tragic, passionate. France rediscovers him not as an Austrian officer, but as Napoleon's son. Memory chooses its own allegiance. Meanwhile, Europe continues its long 19th century. Empires expand, empires fracture, new ideologies rise, nationalism spreads like wildfire, and through it all, the Bonaparte name refuses to disappear. In 1852, Louis Napoleon Bonaparte declares himself Emperor Napoleon III, the nephew, not the son. History takes an indirect path, but even Napoleon III understands the emotional weight of the Eaglet, because the absence of Napoleon II made space for others. Slow breath. Decades pass. Wars reshape borders. The First World War erupts. Empires collapse, including Austria-Hungary. The Habsburg dynasty falls. The palace at Schönbrunn becomes a relic of another age. And suddenly, the political geometry of Europe shifts again. In 1940, more than a century after his death, Adolf Hitler orders the remains of Napoleon II transferred from Vienna to Paris. It is a calculated gesture, symbolic, strategic. The body of the Eaglet returns to France at last, not by choice, not by destiny, but by propaganda. History is rarely gentle with its symbols. Slow inhale. His remains are placed at Les Invalides, near Napoleon Bonaparte himself, father and son, finally reunited in death. Visitors walk the marble floors. They look up at the grand dome. They read the name, Napoleon II. For many, it feels like a restoration. For others, a footnote. But the symbolism is undeniable. The child of two courts returns to the land of his myth. What remains of him? Not speeches, not laws, not victories, only potential. And sometimes, potential is more enduring than achievement. The eaglet represents something uniquely European. The fragility of dynasties, the volatility of legitimacy, the tension between bloodline and consent, between inheritance and reality, slow breath. He was born into absolute expectation, raised under absolute caution, and died before either side could claim him fully. Austria shaped his education. France shaped his legend. Europe shaped his confinement. No single nation owns his memory. In modern Europe, where monarchies have faded into constitutional roles, where republics dominate, where identity is debated rather than imposed, his story feels distant, yet familiar, because he embodies a question that transcends empires. Is destiny inherited or constructed? Slow inhale. The young Duke never answered that question. He never had the time, but his existence exposed the fragility of political balance. The Congress of Vienna tried to freeze history, but history moves, even through children, even through silence. Today, visitors at Les Invalides often pause before his tomb only briefly. The father's shadow is vast, the son's monument smaller, yet those who linger understand something quieter. They see not a failed emperor, but a human life caught between forces too large to control. Slow breath. The legend of the eaglet is not about conquest. It is about inheritance without power, identity without freedom, expectation without choice. And in that sense, it is profoundly modern, because many lives are shaped by narratives they did not choose. He never ruled, yet he ruled imaginations. He never commanded an army, yet he commanded nostalgia. He never wore the imperial crown, yet he carries the weight of it in memory. And perhaps that is his strange form of reign. Slow inhale. In the end, the eaglet teaches us something subtle. History does not only remember those who act, it remembers those who could have acted, those suspended between possibility and restraint, those who stood at the crossroads and were never allowed to walk. The prince who never reigned, the child of two courts, the son of an empire, now rests beneath French stone, and within European memory, silence. The eagle once shook the continent. The eaglet never spread his wings, yet his shadow still moves across history, fade to black,